Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Peter Moses with my co-host Ardina Seward. Charles Stern is away for the month of September from us, and Ardina is being very annoying. She's videoing the early part of this show.
Well, because it's for a good cause. It's for students at Medgar Evers College who are young journalism students who want to come into this business. And a friend of mine, Winston Mitchell, has asked that I make a mini documentary, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay, fine. Hello, students. We have a guest on today who's led a most interesting life, and his life today is as interesting as any other time in his life. His name is Nitin Gupta. He's a physician living in the Dobbs Ferry area, but he is not just your everyday doctor. He is a concierge doctor. I don't know if you remember that show about the Hamptons, about a concierge doctor who was helicoptered here, there, and everywhere, and met all the glitterati and a lot of famous people. Is that what your life is like?
No.
You work in pediatrics.
I'm in pediatrics, so I would be lying if I were to say that show did not inspire this practice. It definitely was. I was an ER pediatrician in Brooklyn who burnt out and kind of came up to Dobbs and kind of started a similar practice to that character on that show. So very similar beginnings. So.
Did you marry a blonde?
No, I never made it that far. He got married.
Okay.
That's a little personal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
what's
if you wanted to live out the life of that show...
Well, if I wanted to live out the life, I wouldn't move to Dobbs Ferry.
You would have moved to the Hamptons.
Yeah, there we go.
And been a real life.
Well, speaking of moving to Dobbs Ferry, he kind of went from the, as my mother would say, from the fat into the frying pan, because...
There was an incident in Dobbs Ferry that we'd like you to talk about. We only have 4 minutes until the break, but briefly, tell us your take on what happened in the town with these T-shirts that some consider to be racist, and it brought into play the restaurant Sam's, which has been there for 40, 50, 60 years, and Ardina and I both have gone to that restaurant. I've been there for a lot of special occasions. My 60th birthday was there.
Well, first of all, Sam's, it's bizarre how Sam's restaurant got involved. They have nothing to do with this. And I actually, my family eats there every week, maybe a couple of times a week. We probably need to cut back a little bit on that waistline. But I mean, how, I guess Sam's got involved,
let's describe what happened.
So what happened?
And not what happened afterwards, but what happened?
What happened? So there was a T-shirt that essentially said, "Go back to where you came from." That's the gist of that.
Or
T-shirt.
implied that. Didn't actually say that.
No, it was actually.
So if you come here, you have to act like you're from here.
Exactly.
Something more like that along those lines.
But that rhetoric has been used.
It's coded language.
It's coded.
Coded language.
Yes.
And that kind of coded language has been used.
You know, you're going to tell us your version of the what happened to you when you were a boy. But I have to tell you, I grew up in Portchester, and I grew up on an Irish Catholic street in a mostly Italian Catholic community, When I was 15 years old, I was the first Jew to play football for Portchester for many years. They shot out our picture window with a BB gun. They kicked in our screen door. They hung my father in effigy. They wrote "Jew go home" in paint in front of our house, and they put an unlit Molotov cocktail in our backyard. Portchester police were staking out the bushes. When they were there, nothing ever happened, but these things happened, and the only way they ended for my family is the mayor of Portchester came to the house and told me whatever I had to do to make it stop, I would not be arrested. So the ringleader jumped on the mayor's car and said, "You're going to protect a bunch of blanking Jews?" And I said, "Does that include right now?" And I pulled this kid, Skippy Smith, off the car, and I beat him to within an inch of his life, and that's the only way it ended for me. that no one ever wrote those things. No one ever knocked anything out of place in the house. No more screens being kicked in. I broke both of his legs. I broke 2 of his ribs. I broke his jaw. I broke his teeth. I broke 1 of his arms. And that ended it. So racist conduct has consequences.
It does.
And the people who did this in Dobbs Ferry should get arrested. Don't you think so, Ardina?
Well, yes, they should get arrested, but right now I believe the FBI is involved. I think they're looking at it as a hate crime, and there are a couple of individuals that are backpedaling, I should say, and I guess since their names have already been in the paper, we can talk about them on the air and their participation.
Well, let's do that, but we're going to do that after we come back from break.
After we come back, and
we're going to have
their participation in this.
We're going to have a Fox News break and a Fox Business News break. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. Please stay tuned. This is an important show today, and we don't want you to miss a minute of it. See you on the other side.
Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
Thanks for staying with us, folks. It's 3:21, which means that we have a half an hour plus more of exciting information and personal stories about what people have experienced in Westchester County regarding discrimination, regarding bias, regarding hate. Nitin, I know, was telling us a story that did not happen in Westchester County, but kind of sensitized him to what racial bias is all about. As a young kid, 2 years old, they, meaning the evil forces out there, burned a cross at his parents' house in, what town was it, Nitin?
This was in Texas, in rural Texas.
In Texas, and that started their migration from the south to the north, where there is still discrimination, albeit in a subtle form, but hey, it's there. Mm-hmm. So I guess, Nitin, why don't you recount your experience from there to here and how there is not really that much difference than here?
No, I have to disagree. It is different here. It is. I think it's a different time. It's about 40 years later. And back when I was 2 years old, in rural Texas, we were one of the only colored families in that town, and we were called colored.
Right, Indian American.
We were Indian American. I mean, there was one other family. It was a Mexican family, and there was a black family, and that was it. That was the 3 of us, and so, but we were colored. That's what we were told. And my brother was constantly getting into fights at school, and so much so that he no longer has cartilage in his nose because he was getting beat up.
Oh my goodness!
And there was just no protection for him, and this was the reality over there. And so it just we lived there for about 2 years, and about a year and a half. And
what part of Texas was this?
This is about 45 minutes outside of Dallas at that time.
Okay.
And so my dad was an engineer at the nuclear power plant over there, and also I explained earlier before the show that my dad at that time was flying around the country and on other projects, but it was one night where my mom I woke up to my mom screaming, and there was and my brother's at the window, and my mom's frantically calling people on the phone, and I look out the window, I see there's a burning cross, and when I tell this story, of course there are people who don't believe it, and they haven't believed it over these 40 years when I've told this story.
Why don't they believe it?
They don't want to.
That's called a privilege. That you don't have to believe something like that. It's uncomfortable. It makes people uncomfortable.
But what happened? I know that your family left. That they figured they didn't move to the United States to get lynched by a bunch of white bigots.
Yeah.
But were the police called?
Of course, the police were called.
Did they come?
They were already there.
Or someone else had called because they had seen the cross burning before your mother did?
From what my mom and my parents told me, and in a small town like that, so we were saved by some family friends who drove about 35 minutes away, and they lived there before us, long before us, but the police were already there.
So basically the police acted as observers rather than enforcers. Is that?
I mean, if you're in a white hood, you could be observing.
Yeah. So the police.
I don't think that's what he's saying, but I don't think he wants to go any further.
Yeah,
I see in your eyes what you mean. And,
yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen,
so of course,
yeah.
You're called, and this is in the late 70s. So it's small town, and that's why I say that rural Texas at that time was very different from where we are now. I do have faith in our police over here, and I do have faith that our police are not participating in setting bonfires, burning crosses in people's lawns here. That's why it's very different.
But how have you experienced discrimination here in Westchester?
I think any person of color does experience microaggressions. And I've lived in Westchester for 7 years. It's
more subtle.
It's subtle, but on a level of innocence, naivety.
Making assumptions based on what you look like.
Like being told, hey, your English is really good. I'm glad it is, because that's the language we speak where I'm from.
And I would tell people where I grew up with that their English was terrible, because people in Portchester like to sound like they're Bronx Italians, but they're not.
Yeah. So, but where are you from? Well, California. Well, no, where are you really from? You don't like. I was born and raised in California. I don't know where else you're gonna. Where my mom's womb. So, but those are the things.
All right, so
right?
you moved to California.
Well, we were born in California. I was born in California.
Okay.
My family was originally from California.
Then you moved to Texas.
Then we moved to Texas, and then we quickly got sent back to California.
And did you ever encounter anything
in California?
Excuse me?
Like any racism in California?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
But nothing as violent as that.
No.
It was just the same old routine name calling and.
I mean, there's the name calling. There's the assumptions of, well, only Indian people, kind of work at gas stations, things like that. But I mean, there's definitely a lot of discrimination and a lot of name calling and
yet you on the outside seem like you've dealt with this and moved on from it.
No.
Okay, good.
No, I don't think any person of color will ever move on. I don't think what happened to you, I don't think you're ever going to truly move on either.
It's indelible.
No, I'm incapable of letting it go.
It's indelible. It is an indelible mark.
You can't move on. Forgive and forget. Nobody ever forgets.
No,
you can forget.
I became a news person because I wanted to go after bullies. Yeah. Because there was no one there to protect me. My father was a very weak man. My mother was terribly frightened, and the only one who was going to be able to protect me was me.
I think when it happens to you as a young kid,
yeah,
that it sets up a pattern in your life where you incorporate the experiences into your
soul,
into your soul, but also into your life intent. Yeah. Into your actions, into the way you react to people, into the way you view people.
Ardina experienced that in Mamaroneck.
Absolutely.
And in the part of Mamaroneck where she lived, which was not the mansion part of Mamaroneck. It wasn't Orienta, where some of your patients probably are in places like Orienta Point and the grounds of Westchester Country. And the grounds of Westchester Country Club.
You're assuming all my patients are very wealthy.
You're a concierge doctor. Of course your patients are.
25% of my patients are on Medicaid or uninsured.
See? I made an assumption based on the fact that he's a concierge doctor. But
that's a very different discussion.
But we have to go off to commercial now, and I'll lick my wounds and apologize. Stick with us, WVOX.
To Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
Thanks for staying with us, folks. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Ardina Sood along with Peter Moses and Nitin Gupta, who is, I should say, Dr. Nitin Gupta, who is a doctor in concierge pediatrician in Westchester County.
And before we get on with the rest of the racism story, if people want to reach you, how can they do that?
The best way to reach me would be my email. It would be info@rivertownspeds, so rivertownspeds.com.
Oh, you must know Michael Dardano. He's a PR guy who, just about owns Dobbs Ferry. Anyway, Ardina, go ahead.
And we are talking about discrimination in Westchester and about a specific incident where a racist T-shirt, was left at the premises of 3 black families in Dobbs Ferry. And the author of the T-shirt is a gentleman, Peter, his first name escapes me.
Vincent Vicchio,
who I did send an email to asking him if he would like to be on the show.
Who has an office in Yonkers.
And apparently never heard from him. But the T-shirt, the template of the T-shirt and the words from the T-shirt apparently came from his authorship, and he has described that he didn't feel that he had done anything offensive because basically it came from a sign they had seen in Montauk.
Yeah.
Which said the same thing.
No, it didn't say the same thing.
Well, it
had a much simpler message that could not be construed as racist.
Which would not be, and again, I mean, in his defense, he did write that it was not meant to be offensive, that it just meant that people have to follow the rules in the neighborhoods that they have moved to.
Well, let me read it to you. Please respect it. You came from there because you didn't like it there. And now you want to change here to be like there. We are not racist. Of course, when everyone says they're not racist, they almost always are. Phobic.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. You probably are phobic. Or anti-whatever you are. We simply like here the way it is. And many of us were actually born here and stayed because it's not like there, wherever there was. You are welcome here with open arms, but please stop trying to make here like there. If you want here to be like there, you should not have left there to come here. Please love Dobbs Ferry as we do, and please do your best to leave it just as you found it. Now, on the surface, you could say, okay, that's people are just saying a message that, we love our community. But they're basically, since this was targeted to African Americans and other people of color.
And other Asian. Yeah.
But basically, this was a point of intimidation. And it's very poorly worded.
This is intimidation. Yeah, actually, if you want to talk about grammar, it's terrible.
Not just grammar, the whole wording of it. You came from there because you didn't like it there. I mean, basically, they're trying to say you came from this bad neighborhood or that bad neighborhood, and you wanted to bring your attitudes here. I mean, the point is, you stay in line. You do what we want you to do, or you're going to have to leave. So, and if you don't like it here, and that's something that's so active in the Trump world, like Mike Ditka, the Hall of Fame football player and then coach,
basically said the same thing. Basically said the same thing. Yeah.
No, he said worse. I mean, he said, if you can't respect this country,
then get out. Then get out. Yeah. But this is.
But that is what happens when you have a leader who's an absolute avowed white nationalist and who denigrates people who are different than he is. And you have 38% of the population in this country who, no matter what they put on CNN, no matter what they put on MSNBC, no matter what's in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the Miami Herald, the Columbus Dispatch, I can go on and on and on, they're not listening because they're afraid. They're afraid that the America that has not even served them well. Most of these people are not wealthy people. I mean, the people who are in power are, but the people who's the supporters who live in the Dakotas are dirt poor.
Because there's so much of it that's a misperception. A case in point is last week there were people who there was I guess a rather informal petition to paint a BLM mural on the streets in Mamaroneck, New York.
Yeah.
And there was a town meeting, and it was voted down 3-4. And although it was supported by the mayor, Tom Murphy, it was voted down 3-4.
What does that mean, 3-4?
3. There were 4 against and 3 in favor. And there were also
by the board.
By the board. And there were other people. Apparently there was this mysterious hearing that wasn't well publicized.
Of course not.
And there were people who came forward and spoke against having that mural painted on the streets, although that mural would have been painted not in the very Tony section of Mamaroneck, but in the blue-collar section of Mamaroneck.
There were people who were driving their Volvos and Mercedes wouldn't even be rolling down those streets.
Exactly, but part of the reasons, and again, this is from a cursory Facebook reading. Part of the reasons it reads as that people were saying that it would attract terrorists, it would attract a bad element. I mean, I scratched my head saying, what? What? Are they serious? But this is what they were using to justify
well,
not
having... Well, Dobbs Ferry. The terrorists are the white people who just don't want to accept it. The United States, by virtue of our population, is going to change, whether they like it or not. Now, for people like me, the Supreme Court, I think it's going to be Christians versus everybody else. And if Trump has a second term, I would not be surprised if there's legislation that gets approved and agreed to by the Supreme Court to call the United States a Christian country.
Well,
which means people like me, maybe people like you. I don't know, Nitin. I don't know what religion your family is, but
my family is probably a very, very diverse family.
I'm sure it is.
It's I grew up Hindu. My wife is half Hindu, half Christian. My mother-in-law lives with us, is Methodist. Our brother-in-law is Muslim.
Some of the people and some people in your family.
Nobody's married into Judaism.
Give it another generation.
I know.
Yeah.
I think probably my son and little girl across the street, that might happen. I don't know.
But this is this is America, and this is the America that is evolving, and this is what people don't want to realize. Well, maybe they do realize it, but they're fighting against it. And let me tell you something, folks. For those of you who don't like it, then it's too bad, because it's not going to stop.
It's a losing fight.
And this is why people like me, anyway, growing up in the racist community of Portchester, this is the reason why I live in White Plains, why I insisted on raising my daughter in White Plains. My daughter had someone read at her bat mitzvah who was Hindu. She had somebody read at her bat mitzvah who was Muslim. She had lots of different Christians, lots of different cultures there, and one who was half Chinese.
This is the world this is the world and the society that we have worked for, and we will continue to work for.
But a place like White Plains works because it is diverse, and and the schools are diverse.
But for people, even in towns where people don't want it, even in towns where people are fighting against it, it's not going to work, because they're going to lose by default. They're going to lose by default. There are going to be people that are coming in. They're going to be Latinos in their neighborhoods. They're going to be Asian Americans in their neighborhoods. There's going to be black people in their neighborhoods. It is a wave that cannot be stopped.
Absolutely.
So they can, if God forbid, if Trump gets in office again, then so be it. But will it slow things down?
But it's inexorable.
Yes. But the genie is out of the bottle, and the genie is not getting put back in. Period.
If you think about it for a minute, the whole idea of a genie is a genie is a non-white apparition. So I don't think that they're thinking of genies right now in Lubbock, Texas, or in Birmingham, Alabama.
Well, yeah, these are the same people that don't recognize, but these are the same people that don't see Jesus as being Jewish either.
I had a conversation with Jesus about this. He's Jewish, but he understands.
Understands.
So we're going to be back with Dr. Gupta on the other side, and we are going to spend the last few minutes talking about why he was originally coming here, which is to talk about his conscientious practice and what it really means not like the TV show. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With world and national news, here is the latest update from Fox News Radio on 1460 WVOX.
Fox News, I'm Kathleen Maloney. Despite fierce opposition from Democrats, President Trump is determined to nominate a Supreme Court justice to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg as early as this week. He spoke about it at a rally in North Carolina last night.
The president seemed thrilled that his supporters were fired up over this looming nomination fight. At one point, the crowd started chanting, "Fill that seat." The president said he wanted his campaign to start coming up with T-shirts with that on there.
Fox's Mark Meredith. The Secretary of Health and Human Services with an optimistic outlook for containing the coronavirus.
We've seen a almost 50% decline in cases, 50% decline in hospitalizations, an even greater decline in fatalities since the high point.
Alex Azar on NBC's Meet the Press giving much of the credit to the American people for obeying health recommendations and restrictions. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
The end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight.
President Donald Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden face off in an epic showdown to decide the future of our nation. And America's premier journalist, Chris Wallace, moderates this can't-miss event. The biggest stage, the biggest stakes, the future of America. Chris Wallace moderates the first presidential debate, September 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox News Channel. America is watching. The Fox News Rundown is a weekday morning podcast that dives deep into the major and controversial stories of the day. Hosted by the anchors of Fox News Radio. Subscribe now to hear a perspective of news you won't find anywhere else. Listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Between the junk you've accumulated and purged and the waste generated from everyday living, you need to rely on your trash removal service to get the job done. You deserve honesty. You expect reliability. You need CRP Sanitation. Since 1979, CRP Sanitation has been the trash removal company homeowners, business owners, and contractors have depended on for honest, reliable service. No dispatchers in different locations who don't know you, no answering services. CRP employees answer the phones, and they know their customers by name. Communication is a key to their success. Communication with you. Other companies offer the world and never deliver. CRP Sanitation offers exactly what you get. Honesty, dependability, professionalism. Doing some remodeling? CRP Sanitation can estimate the weight and needs of a dumpster. And that means not paying more than you need or having to add additional services at additional costs. Not all trash companies are created equal. Family-owned. CRP Sanitation. Westchester's finest in sanitation. Call 592-4129. 592-4129.
Hi, let me tell you a bit about Olivet Gospel Church. My name is Pastor Russell McLeod, and for over 20 years, I have been pastor of this evangelical church. At Olivet, we seek to worship God in the beauty of holiness and to engage in a simple obedience to the Word of God. We have a growing and diverse community of worshipers who celebrate Christ so that you never forget the refreshing sense of deliverance and victory you experience in worship. When you visit Olivet Gospel Church, you leave with tools to be a builder in God's kingdom. Let me invite you to visit our place of worship at 3900 Dyer Avenue, the corner of 233rd Street in the Bronx. Every Sunday at 8 in the morning, or for a second service at 11, you will be thrilled to participate in the praise and worship and receive an inspirational and comforting message from God's Word. Whoever you are, you will be at home at Olivet Gospel Church. God has given this church a history of ministry that goes back almost 50 years in the Bronx. Come, God will remove the roadblocks in your life. I am Reverend Dr. Russell McLeod.
Hi, this is Dr. Ronald Hoffman, your trusted partner in health and wellness for over 30 years. Catch my show, Intelligent Medicine, on WVOX every Saturday at 4 p.m. and Sunday at 5 a.m. for cutting-edge health information. Also check out drhoffman.com for updated vital health news throughout the week, as well as for access to the highest quality supplements and to find out how to become a patient. That's Intelligent Medicine with me, Dr. Ronald Hoffman, weekends on WVOX and anytime at drhoffman.com.
The best way to start your day.
Good morning.
Good morning, Westchester, with Dennis and Tommy. Weekday mornings from 6 to 9, right here on 1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
We're back for our final quarter hour of Westchester Eye on the Radio. We have with us today Dr. Nitin Gupta, who's a concierge doctor out of Dobbs Ferry. We've been talking mostly about race and issues of race, but we do want to talk about his practice. But first, we have one of the people who calls into the station on a regular basis, Vince. Vince, do you have something to add today?
Yes, well, a couple of things. I used to live in Dobbs Ferry off Ashford Avenue on Ogden, and I know the community relatively well. And I've spent a long time out in the Hamptons and out in Montauk, and I know of what you were talking about out there. And a couple of things that I thought maybe you could help me understand with this T-shirt business. It was 3 families that got the shirts, from what I understand, and they were all African American.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, that is correct.
2 African American women.
Now, I'm just wondering whether anybody else in town might have gotten one, because I can't imagine somebody going through the trouble of printing up 3 separate shirts and not making more.
Well, Vince, we have no idea if they printed up 3 shirts or they printed up 300. The only thing we know is that the only homes that receive these T-shirts, maybe these people are.
That's what I was wondering.
Maybe these people are wearing them to bed at night.
Actually, let me step in.
I don't know.
That's
the other thing I was wondering is, I heard you mentioning that this gentleman, Mr. Vecchio, has an office or something in Yonkers.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Why is that important?
Because
and you know what? I'm going to step in. Let's Dr. Gupta.
Okay.
His office is not important to this conversation.
That's
I agree. I'm going to agree with you on that.
Encouraging people to
Vince.
You're not suggesting that, are you?
I'm not. Let the doctor talk.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks, Vince. You made some very good points, and now we're going to respond to your points. We appreciate your call.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if 3 families got the shirt. It doesn't matter if 300 shirts were made. The fact of the matter is that the shirts were intended to be paraded around. They were made, and they were delivered. So it doesn't matter if you're diluting the numbers by saying, well, it was only 3 minority families and it was 200 white families got it. It's what does the message of the shirt say? It is historical language of bias, intimidation. That's it.
By the way, the reason I brought up Yonkers was not for this guy to have people visiting him, was to say that he's kind of a hypocrite. He wants to have Dobbs Ferry stay the way Dobbs Ferry was, and yet he has an office in one of the most diverse communities in Westchester County. That was the reason I brought it up.
Well, the reason why I don't want to even mention his name or his business or anything is because I don't want to give him any more importance than he thinks he deserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I want to emphasize that he's more than welcome to come on the show, because there are 2 sides to the story, and everybody has a right to rebut what is being said. So if Vince, if you're listening to the show, please give us a call, and you have the forum. You have the forum to speak.
But he will be responded to also.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the forum to speak.
Well,
he has the ability to give us his perspective, and we have the ability to counter what he says.
He has a right.
Since I don't think that we're going to agree with him.
Well, he has a right to explain his position. And Nitin, I'm sorry.
Is it right?
He has a right.
I don't think he has a right, but okay.
He's had opportunities.
That's different. Yes,
he's had opportunities to explain himself. He's explained. I don't know. Some BS.
He's declaimed that it means what everybody who's read it thinks it means, who aren't his friends. Right?
He says it was meant to, it was about overdevelopment. Nothing in that T-shirt says overdevelopment.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, we're living in a political era where these things have been sanctioned. We're living in a political era where people have been emboldened to
say whatever they want,
say
no
whatever
matter
they
how
want to
hurtful.
say, and to act upon the impulses that have been held at bay for many, many, many years.
But here's the difference. They feel that they can say whatever they want. But if we challenge them, we've struck a raw nerve. Like, one of the reasons why you're being so gentle about this in some ways and so bending over to be fair is you don't want to be accused of doing the same kind of things that they do. And the fact, one of the problems with Democrats, and I am one, but one of the problems with Democrats is that Democrats want to be diplomatic when your opponent is the complete antithesis of diplomacy, and they don't perceive what you're doing as being diplomatic. They think it's a point of weakness. And growing up in Portchester, I tried to reason with people, but the only way I got it to end was to escalate it physically, because that's all they would have understood.
So what,
Peter,
before kind of our Black Lives Matter rally that I spoke at, I was talking to the organizers, and it was very interesting. It was the organizer of it. Her name's Kelly. She said, I want to be Martin, but I know I should be Martin, but a lot of me feels like Malcolm right now.
Well, remember that this is you were too young for the civil rights movement, but that was basically the tipping point.
Yes,
that was the tipping point. I mean, Martin Luther King certainly had his purpose because he got us to the point.
But you do remember that Martin Luther King also said that he understood Malcolm X's response to things and didn't find it completely inappropriate.
No.
Sure. Look, if you look at the Gandhi movement, even with Gandhi, who is the icon of pacifism, that there was a point where Gandhi never out and out sanctioned violence, but Gandhi understood violence.
Yep.
And this
I mean, your family is Indian. I'm sure you know the history of your own country. People in the West had this perception, and probably many of them still do after watching that one movie, that Indians are by nature pacifists. But the reality is that they're people like anybody else, and there are all sorts of different kinds of political sensibilities in every country on earth. It's not just India; it's El Salvador.
People should look at if they think that Asians are pacifists. Look at the Tamil fighters.
Yes,
that's a whole. Yeah, you want to talk pacifism?
But see, the reason why I want to keep this peaceful is because Dobbs is my town. It's my village, and I am a board member of our Chamber of Commerce. I don't want, I want this conversation going. I don't want any violence.
You see, I can never be on any boards because I am very strong.
But I don't. This is minorities, the people that were targeted by this T-shirt.
Yeah.
We moved to this village because we want to make it our own. We're not trying to change it. But if people are threatened by the color of our skin, the food we eat, the cultural background we have, they're the ones who are going to have to change. But they're going to have to come to that realization, and if they don't like it, they can leave.
That's very true. And
the difference between 2020 Westchester versus late
1965.
70s, late 70s rural Texas is that.
I'll talk about here.
A lot of us people of color are emboldened now that we ain't going to take this anymore.
And we ain't going nowhere.
We're here,
and that's a good thing. And I personally, I've never considered myself white. I don't think many Jews think of themselves as white. Maybe Scarsdalians, but but the rest of them don't. We're going to be taking a week off next week as I celebrate
Yom Kippur,
or not celebrate, but I'm taking off for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Of course, I've lived such a perfect life the last year that I have nothing to atone for except for the 365 days that comprise the year. So anyway, everybody, those of you who are Jewish, have an easy fast. Those of us who are not, I hope that you have a great week. Bye bye now.